My name is Susan Parker. I am 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago my mother threw my sister a surprise birthday party and forgot to tell me. I still sent the gift. I still wrote the card. I still signed it with love. And then my grandmother called me and said 7 words that ended 11 years of silence in this family. Come over alone. Don't tell your mother. What was inside the cedar box on her kitchen table is the reason I am telling you this now. It is the reason I drove 90 minutes the next morning with both hands at 10 and 2. It is the reason the dining room in my parents' house 6 weeks later was the quietest room I have ever stood in. Let me show you. Welcome back to The Secret's Revenge. This is where quiet women tell the loudest stories about families, boundaries, and the documents that finally say the truth out loud. If you have ever been the daughter who was called fine, easy, self-sufficient, and somehow ended up being the one no one remembered to include, stay with me. This one does not get louder, just gets clearer. I should probably tell you who I am before I tell you what they did. I am a contracts attorney at a mid-sized firm in Hartford, Connecticut. I have been there 6 years. I get to my desk at 7:15 every morning. Before that, I run 3 miles in the dark in winter and in the soft gray of summer. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in West Hartford that I have paid for myself since I was 26. The furniture is mostly IKEA. The couch came from a Goodwill on New Britain Avenue. I bought it on a Tuesday, reupholstered it on a Sunday, and never once asked anyone in my family for $1. My family has always had a name for women like me. They call it self-sufficient. They have called me self-sufficient since I was 8 years old, and for most of my life I wore that word like an achievement badge. I thought it meant I was strong. I thought it meant I was the kind of woman who didn't need anyone to remember her birthday, who didn't need a hand on her shoulder at her grandfather's funeral, who didn't need an invitation to her own sister's surprise party. I spent my 20s learning how not to be inconvenient. Apparently I got very good at it. By 34, I was starting to wonder when self-sufficient had quietly become easy to forget. I would love to tell you I figured that out on my own. I did not. October figured it out for me. And if you are going to understand the party, you have to understand the pattern before the party. My 30th birthday my mother forgot until 3 in the afternoon. She called me from a Costco parking lot with the wind blowing into the phone and said, "Oh sweetheart, happy birthday." I was going to bake, but the day got away from me. What about brunch next Sunday? Next Sunday became the following Sunday, then the following month, then never. Vanessa's 30th birthday, 6 months later, got a catered lunch for 40 people, a French bakery cake, calligraphy place cards, and enough planning energy to power a local election. My MBA graduation 10 years ago, my parents missed because Vanessa had a wedding tasting that weekend and my mother said we would do something Sunday. Sunday became Thursday. Thursday became nothing. I framed my own diploma and hung it over an IKEA dresser. At 23, standing next to my grandfather's casket, my mother leaned over and asked me to help carry Vanessa's purse because Vanessa was crying. I had a transcript of being passed over. I just had never read it back to myself in order. And I want to be fair about one thing. I did not think my mother was cruel. I thought she was a woman who loved the child who needed her loudly, and I was the other child, the one she could rest from. I built an entire identity around that explanation. It was, as it turns out, the most expensive interpretation of my life. The Tuesday I found out about the party was ordinary in the way the worst days often are. 2 cups of coffee, 3 contracts open, Outlook full, too much to do. I was scrolling Instagram during my 2nd cup when my cousin Madison posted a story. Balloons in my parents' backyard. A cake. My mother laughing in the middle of 22 familiar faces. My father at the grill. My brother-in-law carrying glasses. Both of my aunts, my uncle, both paternal grandparents and neighbor cousins, people who had all somehow managed to hear about a party I had not known existed. Pink text across the photo said, "Surprise." My favorite cousin Vanessa is 31. The timestamp said Saturday. 2 days earlier. I zoomed in. I checked the date again. I set my phone down and stared at my computer screen for a full minute, without understanding a single word on it. Then I picked the phone back up and took a screenshot. I sent it to no one. I just kept it. At 7 that evening, I called my mother. She picked up on the 4th ring and said, "Hi sweetie," like nothing had happened. I said, "Mom, was there a party for Vanessa on Saturday?" There was a pause. Longer than a normal pause. long enough to tell me she had an answer ready and was deciding which version to use. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "we were going to tell you. Just came together so fast." I let the silence sit. "Madison posted 3 weeks of planning," I said. Another pause. I could hear a cupboard open and close. "Honey, your father and I know how you are about big crowds. And you've been so busy. And Vanessa has been stressed, you know how she is. And with Brett's mother and everything, we just thought. What did you think?" She exhaled then. It was the exhale of someone stepping into a sentence she had used on me before. "I thought you'd be too busy." I closed my eyes. That sentence had been living in my family for years, wearing different clothes. It was there on my 30th birthday when the day got away from her. It was there at my graduation when they would do something later. It was there every time I had been treated like a woman who did not need to be considered in real time because she would make sense of it on her own. "Mom," I said, "I needed to know my sister was turning 31. "Well, I'm telling you now. Knowing is not the same as being invited." "Susan, please. Don't be dramatic. We're a family." I said goodnight and hung up first. Then I got my coat. There is a stationery store on Pratt Street in downtown Hartford that stays open until 8. I drove there. I bought a cream linen card with tiny gold sprigs pressed into the front. $8. Paid cash. Went home. Sat at my desk. Wrote, in the neat handwriting law school gave me, "Vanessa, happy 31st. I hope this year brings you everything you want it to. With love, Susan." Then I went online and ordered the diptyque candle she had been posting about for 6 months. Figure. $180. Next day shipping. When the checkout page autofilled her address, I noticed something I had somehow never stopped to examine. 12 Maple Lane, Litchfield, Connecticut. My grandfather's house. Vanessa had been living there rent-free since 2019. I had never asked how that had worked. At the funeral, someone had said the house would go to my mother for safekeeping. Vanessa had needed somewhere to land after a breakup. My mother had given her one. I had been 28, studying, working, surviving, and had nodded without asking a single follow-up question. That was the first rug I never looked under. The Sunday after the party, my mother invited me to lunch to make up for it. Her phrase, not mine. I went. I drove 40 minutes to the house I grew up in. Vanessa's white Lexus was already in the driveway. My mother hugged me a little too long at the door. Vanessa hugged me too and said, "You look tired, sis. You need to take time off." I said, "I'm fine. Thanks." The roast was already on the table. My father carved. My mother passed the beans. Vanessa narrated her own party like it was a charming accident nobody needed to apologize for. How surprised she was. How hard she screamed. How funny the cake was. My mother laughed at each part even though she had orchestrated every minute of it. Halfway through lunch, I got up to refill my water. On the kitchen counter, between the toaster and a stack of mail, sat the diptyque candle in its white box. Unopened. Pristine. On top of it sat the card I had written. Still sealed. My handwriting visible across the envelope. And beneath both of them, like punctuation, was a pizza coupon. I did not say a word. I refilled my water. I went back to the table. I finished the beans. I drove home listening to NPR. I went to the gym. I walked on the treadmill for 40 minutes. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a door I had kept shut for 11 years opened a fraction. To understand why, you need to know who my grandfather was. His name was Theodore Whitaker. We called him Ted. He was my mother's father. He lived in a white farmhouse on 3 acres in Litchfield at 12 Maple Lane, a place he had bought in 1971 with a teacher's salary and patience. He was a high school physics teacher. He retired in 1998. He repaired the porch every other summer. He grew tomatoes and disappointment in roughly equal quantities. He used pencils to do crossword puzzles because he said, "Only fools act permanent before they have to." When I was 19, I started driving up there on weekends. Sometimes my grandmother was there, sometimes not. Their marriage was complicated in the way marriages from that generation often were. The point is, he was often alone and I kept going anyway. I did his taxes for fun. I read legal textbooks out loud while he weeded. He once told me, "Susie, the law is the only family that doesn't play favorites." In the spring of 2015, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He had 3 months. I drove up every weekend. I sat beside his bed when the morphine made him think it was 1974. I held his hand. Vanessa came once for a few hours on Mother's Day, cried in the kitchen, and my mother asked me to get her tissues. At the funeral, while I stood beside his casket trying to understand how a room can still exist after the kindest person in it leaves, my mother leaned over and asked me to help Vanessa pull herself together. I did. I was 23. I trusted her. That was my mistake. There is one more person you need before we get to the cedar box. My grandmother, Vivian Whitaker, is 79 years old. She lives alone now in a farmhouse 40 minutes north of where my grandfather's used to be. She wears wool cardigans in October, does not own a microwave, and makes coffee in a stovetop percolator. She is not a woman who calls for small talk. She calls when something has ripened enough to be spoken. Her call came 21 days after the party, on a Wednesday evening while I was making pasta. "Susan," she said. Just my name. No hello. I turned the burner down. "Grandma, is everything okay? Come over." "Alone. Don't tell your mother." I gripped the wooden spoon. "What's wrong?" "Tomorrow morning before 9. Don't bring anything. Don't tell anyone where you're going." "Is it your health?" "It is not my health. I will see you tomorrow." Then she hung up. I left my apartment at 5:45 the next morning before sunrise. The sky was that flat October purple that makes everything look undecided. I had barely slept. I took the back roads north, maple trees in their second week of color, cell service dropping in the valleys. The whole drive I ran through possibilities. Cancer. Stroke. Dementia. Someone dead. Some old family secret. Some smaller hurt I would once again be expected to handle neatly. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 7:30. She opened the door before I knocked. Cardigan, slippers, hairpin back. Coffee already made. She did not hug me. She has never been a hugger. "Sit," she said. I sat at her kitchen table while she poured coffee into 2 mugs. Her hands were shaking a little. I had never seen that before. Then she went into the dining room and came back carrying something I had not seen since childhood. A small cedar box. Dark wood. Brass corners. About the size of a hardback book. She set it on the table between us. "Before you open it," she said, "I need to say 2 things." I looked at her and waited. "Your grandfather kept this box in his bedroom closet for 15 years. For days before he died, he told me to keep it somewhere safe and only give it to you when I was certain you were ready. That was 11 years ago." I looked down at the box. "Why now?" "Because I saw the pictures from your sister's party," she said. "And I watched my own daughter laughing in her backyard while my oldest granddaughter drank coffee alone in West Hartford. I should have given this to you a long time ago. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. I was wrong and I am sorry." I still did not speak. She took a breath and said, "The second thing is this. Whatever is inside is yours to decide what to do with. I will support whatever you choose. But once you open it, you cannot unknow." I drank a sip of coffee, set the mug down, and opened the box. There were 3 things inside. A yellowed envelope addressed in my grandfather's handwriting to SEP. A small brass key, the kind that belongs to a safe deposit box. And a folded document with a blue notary seal. I opened the document first. First codicil to the last will and testament of Theodore J. Whitaker, dated March 17, 2015. 3 months before he died. I read documents out loud the first time. Law school gave me that habit and I have never lost it. "I, Theodore J. Whitaker of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all prior provisions of my last will and testament regarding the real property located at 12 Maple Lane, Litchfield, Connecticut, and the personal trust fund identified as account number 4711A held at First National Bank of Hartford." I stopped. Then I kept reading. "I direct that both shall pass directly and irrevocably to my granddaughter Susan Vivian Parker upon my death, free of any control, guardianship, or trusteeship by Carol Whitaker Parker." The next paragraph gave a balance. "The trust fund balance as of this date stands at $185,000. The deed to 12 Maple Lane is to be transferred to Susan Vivian Parker by my executor within 30 days of probate. Signed by my grandfather. Witnessed by my grandmother and Gregory Halloran, ESQ notarized in Litchfield County." I set the document down very carefully. My grandmother said, "Now read the letter." I opened the yellowed envelope. 3 handwritten pages in my grandfather's slanted blue ink. He said he was proud of me. He said he was sorry he might not tell me in person. He said he waited until he knew he was dying because he did not want my mother fighting him while he was still alive to hear it. And then, in the middle of page 2, I reached the line that changed the shape of my life. He knew you'd be passed over. I read it twice. Then I kept going. Your mother loves you the way she knows how, which is less than you deserve. She has always told herself it was kindness, that your sister needed more. It is not kindness. It is a story she tells herself. I will not be here to correct it. So I am correcting it now with paper. The house is yours. The fund is yours. They were always going to be. I laid the letter on top of the codicil. I did not cry. I looked at my grandmother and asked the only question that mattered first. Why was this never filed? She nodded like she had been waiting 11 years to answer it. Your mother drove to his house the morning after he died. She told me she was going to pack his clothes. She came back with a banker's box. The unsigned working draft from his desk was inside. She burned it in her fireplace on a Saturday. She thought that was the only copy. Then she slid the brass key across the table toward me. Safe Deposit Box 0731. First National Bank, Asylum Street Branch. Gregory put the signed original there the afternoon they executed it. He told me, Vivian, do not let anyone tell you this didn't happen. Picked up the key. It was warm from her hand. Why didn't you tell me then? Because you were 23, grieving, and your mother is my daughter, she said. I told myself there would be a right moment. This autumn I learned the right moment never arrives on its own. You have to call it. Why did you call it now? Because I counted 22 faces in your father's backyard and yours was not one of them. And I thought Theodore would have stood up and walked out. Then she did something my family almost never does. She put certainty ahead of comfort. Whatever you decide to do, she said, I will testify. Gregory's emails are in my closet. Everything I have is yours. I left her house at 11:15. I hugged her at the door, which I had not done since the funeral. She told me to drive carefully and call when I decided. The cedar box rode in the passenger seat, buckled in with the seatbelt. I know that sounds strange. I did it anyway. And on that drive home I was not thinking about screaming, confronting, or revenge. I was thinking like a lawyer. Connecticut Statute of Limitations on breach of fiduciary duty. 6 years from discovery. Today is day 1. I was thinking about the probate filing. I was thinking about the trust fund. I was thinking about the greeting card I had mailed Vanessa, still sealed, sitting in a house that, if this paper was real, belonged to me. By the time I got home, I had 3 sentences in my head. I need an estate attorney who does not know my mother. I need every land record for 12 Maple Lane. I am not going to raise my voice once. At 1:10 that afternoon, I logged into the county land records portal through my work subscription. Title history for 12 Maple Lane. 1987 to 2015 Theodore J. Whitaker, sole owner. April 2015. Transferred to Carol Whitaker Parker by small estate affidavit filed in probate court 1 month after his death. I opened the PDF. There was my mother's signature. There was the notary stamp from a UPS store on Maple Avenue in Hartford. $2 and a false statement under oath. The form said the deceased left no will and no codicil known to affiant. Affiant being my mother. I kept scrolling. November 2019. Transferred from Carol Whitaker Parker to Vanessa Whitaker Parker. Consideration listed. $1. A quitclaim deed. $1. I put the printed codicil next to my laptop and read the line again. Free of any control, guardianship, or trusteeship by Carol Whitaker Parker. Then I opened a second tab. Vanessa Parker MBA. Boston University Questrom School of Business. 2017 to 2019. I knew roughly what a 2-year MBA there cost because I had looked at that school once myself and closed the tab when the number arrived. Third tab. Vanessa Parker Wedding Mystic sa Aport. Vendor photos. Venue pages. Costs. Then I opened a spreadsheet. Column A date. Column B source. Column C amount. Column D. Corresponding Vanessa life event. By 2:30, I had 37 rows and a feeling that had not yet become anger because it was still too busy arranging itself into evidence. At 2:40 I called First National's Records Department. I gave them the account number from the codicil and said I was inquiring in advance of a fiduciary claim. I used the phrase beneficiary inquiry regarding trustee conduct. That moved me to compliance very quickly. By 4 o'clock, the printout was in my email. September 2017. $94,300 wired to Boston University bursar. December 2019. $22,800 wired to Lexus Financial Services. August 2022. $31,400 wired to Mystic Seaport Catering and associated vendors. And another $36,500 in smaller withdrawals over 8 years coded as household. Total drawn. $185,000. Balance zero. That was when I finally understood the price of being the daughter who was too fine to ask questions. An MBA I did not get. A car I did not drive. A wedding I attended carrying a Cuisinart I bought with my own money. And a house I had sent a birthday gift into without knowing it was legally mine. At 4:30 on a Thursday in October, holding that bank printout in my kitchen, I broke a little. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just enough to know that grief and proof can arrive at the same table. Then I closed the laptop, put on my coat, walked 1 block to a bar called The Lookout, ordered a glass of red wine and called Mason Wheeler. He runs a 3-partner estate firm out of a brownstone on Trumbull Street. I met him at a Hartford Bar Association mixer once. He had told me contracts lawyers make good estate clients because they read footnotes with emotion removed. He picked up on the second ring. "Susan Parker," he said. "Mason," I said, "I need an hour tomorrow morning. It's going to be ugly." At 8:55 the next morning I sat in his conference room with the cedar box in a tote bag and laid everything out in chronological order. Codicil. Letter. Brass key. County records. Bank printout. He read for 22 minutes, took 2 pages of notes, and whistled once when he reached the probate affidavit. "The codicil was never filed," he said. "Correct. Then it's worse for them and better for you. Discovery rule applies. Your clock started yesterday." He set his pen down and looked at me in that careful way good lawyers look when they can see another lawyer trying not to become her own client. "You will want to do this yourself," he said. "Don't." "I won't. Tell me what your mother said on the phone about the party. I thought you'd be too busy." He was quiet for a second. "Susan, your mother said that to you Tuesday. By Wednesday your grandmother handed you 11 years of evidence. You have not been too busy. You have been too kind." That was the first time anyone had put it that plainly. We went to First National that afternoon and opened safe deposit box 0731. Inside was the signed original of the codicil on heavier paper than the copy in the cedar box. Same seal. Same signatures. Same blue ink. Under it were Gregory Halloran's email exchanges with my grandmother from March through July 2015, confirming execution, storage, and his archived copy. 2 letters from Gregory to my grandfather described the codicil as completed in accordance with his wishes. Gregory had died in 2018 in a hit-and-run in Avon. That had nothing to do with this story. Sometimes careful lawyers just die. But before he died, he had done his job thoroughly. Mason photographed everything. We returned the originals to the box. Then we started the quiet part. The next 6 weeks were methodical. I went to work. I ran my miles. I answered my mother's texts with neutral phrases like "busy this week, talk soon." I let her go on believing whatever version of me made her comfortable. Mason filed a sealed probate petition. He subpoenaed First National. He took my grandmother's affidavit in person. A forensic accountant traced every trust withdrawal. By the second week of December, he told me we were ready. I decided I wanted it done on a Sunday, the same day of the week as the surprise party. On Tuesday afternoon I sent one text to my mother. "I'd like to come over Sunday at 2 o'clock. I have something family-related to discuss. Please have Dad, Vanessa, and Brett there. I'd also like Aunt Margaret and Aunt Lynn if they're available. Grandma will be joining us." I hit send and turned my phone face down. My mother called 10 minutes later. I answered on the second ring because first ring looks rehearsed and fourth ring looks punitive. "Sweetie, what is this? Why so formal? Can't you just come for dinner? I prefer Sunday at 2 with everyone there. Margaret and Lynn don't need to be involved in family business. I'd like them there." "You're scaring me, Susan. Is this about the party?" Because we already discussed. Sunday at 2. I heard her breathing change. Of course, sweetie. Of course. Sunday at 2. I'll make a roast. Vanessa texted me 12 minutes later. Hey sis. Mom said you have something to share Sunday. You okay? Want to get coffee first? I did not answer. By Wednesday, cousins had heard. By Thursday, Aunt Margaret and Aunt Lynn knew something was wrong, though not what. I learned later my mother had already begun calling people to pre-frame me as dramatic, upset, overreacting. It did not matter. I spent that week like I spend the week before a deposition. Water. Sleep. Minimal phone. 2 outfits ironed, 1 chosen. Documents reviewed in order 3 separate times. By Saturday night, the cedar box sat on my kitchen table beside my briefcase and my car keys. I slept 8 hours. I want to say one fair thing about Vanessa before I take you into that dining room. Vanessa is not a schemer. She is 3 years younger than I am. As a child she had asthma. As a teenager anxiety. As an adult a degree in communications, then an MBA she did not pay for, then a marriage to Brett Holland who manages a restaurant and as far as I can tell was doing his honest best. She was the easier daughter to love loudly, and my mother made the mistake of treating that as the only kind of love that counted. I do not blame Vanessa for not asking questions at 18. I do not blame her for not asking at 25. I do blame her for not asking eventually. There is an age when lifelong receiving becomes its own decision. By 31 she had reached it. She texted me Saturday evening. Whatever it is, can we be okay? I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I set the phone down and carried the cedar box to the front seat of my car. Sunday morning, December 14th, I dressed in the same outfit I wear to depositions. Black slacks, white silk blouse, navy blazer. When the room matters more than your feelings, uniform is useful. I made coffee the way my grandmother taught me. Ate oatmeal slowly. Checked the briefcase one last time. Inside were the original codicil, the letter copy, the county land records, the first national withdrawal history, the forensic accountant's summary, my grandmother's affidavit, the unopened birthday card I had mailed Vanessa and my grandmother had quietly taken off her counter at Thanksgiving, and a thumb drive backup of everything. The cedar box was empty now. That was deliberate. The empty space was part of the point. Mason texted at 5:30 a.m. standing by. FaceTime at 2:05. You've got this. I did not need encouragement. I appreciated it anyway. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 1:58. There were more cars than I expected. My father's. Vanessa's white Lexus. Brett's Subaru. Aunt Margaret's Volvo.
Aunt Lynn's sedan.
Madison's red Jetta. Tyler's pickup. Word had traveled. I sat in my car for 30 seconds. Picked up the cedar box. Took the briefcase from the trunk. Walked to the front door and rang the bell. I had not rung the bell at my parents' house in 26 years. I had always walked in. My mother answered in the same cashmere sweater from the Instagram photo, makeup on for Sunday lunch, smile already assembled. Sweetie, why are you ringing the bell?
Come in.
You're being so formal. Mum. I stepped past her without hugging her and went straight to the dining room. Everyone was already seated. My father at the head. Vanessa to his right. Brett beside her. Aunt Margaret across. Aunt Lynn next to Margaret. Madison and Tyler in folding chairs against the wall they had clearly brought in themselves. A roast on the table untouched. Water glasses.
Bread basket.
Good china. I set my briefcase in the empty space where the carving knife should have been. Then I set the cedar box beside it. No one spoke. My mother's face changed. She recognized it immediately. Susan, she said quietly, where did you get that? From Grandma. When? Last month. My father looked from the cedar box to my mother and back again. He knew it too. Aunt Margaret said, Carol, what is that? My mother put one hand on the back of her chair and tried to smile her way through it. Susan, sweetheart, whatever you think is in there, let's just sit down and eat and then. Mom, sit down, please. She did not sit. I heard the front door open behind me. My grandmother walked in without knocking. Wool cardigan. Low boots. Purse over one arm. She stopped at the opposite end of the dining room and looked at everyone before saying, in the same steady voice from the phone call, come over alone. Don't tell your mother. That is what I had to say to my granddaughter to give her what was already hers. Then she set her purse on the sideboard and remained standing. I opened the briefcase. I took out the codicil first and set it in front of my father because he was closest. This is Grandpa Ted's codicil to his will, signed in March 2015, 3 months before he died. Witnessed by Grandma and Gregory Halloran. Then the letter. This is the letter he wrote to me the same day. Then the land records. These are the county title records for 12 Maple Lane. The house transferred to Mom in April 2015 by small estate affidavit, then to Vanessa in November 2019 for $1. Then the bank records. This is trust account 4711A, balance in March 2015, $185,000. Balance now $0. Then the forensic report cover page. Every withdrawal traced. Mom signed for each one as trustee. I stopped there. Vanessa spoke first. Wait, she said. Wait. My house? What do you mean my house? My mother did not look at her. She looked only at the cedar box. I picked up my grandfather's letter and began reading aloud. I read the opening line. I read the part where he said he was proud of me. Then I read the sentence that mattered most. He knew you'd be passed over. I looked up. My mother's knuckles were white against the chair back. Then I kept reading. Your mother loves you the way she knows how, which is less than you deserve. She has always told herself it was kindness, that your sister needed more. It is not kindness. It is a story she tells herself. I set the letter down. My mother said immediately Dad didn't write that. My grandmother answered from the far end of the table. I watched him sign it. So did Gregory. My mother tried again. Dad would never. I reached into the briefcase and took out the unopened birthday card. Cream linen. Gold sprigs. My handwriting on the front. I set it beside the codicil. 3 weeks ago I said I sent this to Vanessa with a gift. It stayed unopened on the counter of a house that legally belongs to me. That was the first moment Vanessa started crying. I didn't know, she said. Mom, you told me it was a gift. You told me. Aunt Margaret turned to my mother. Carol, did you do this? My mother stood up so fast the chair legs scraped hard across the floor. After everything I have sacrificed for this family, after everything I've done, you bring my mother into my house, you bring this box, and you stand in my dining room. You haven't sacrificed for me, Mom, I said. You spent my money. Vanessa needed it. You were fine. And then I said back to her the sentence she had been using on me for years, the same sentence from the night of the party, only this time I placed it where it belonged. I thought you'd be too busy. The room went silent in a different way then. Not shocked. Corrected. My phone vibrated in my blazer pocket. I took it out and answered. Mason Wheeler's face appeared on FaceTime. I held the screen where everyone could see him. He stated his name, his firm, and his bar number. Then he said, clearly and without flourish, a petition was filed under seal in Hartford Probate Court last Tuesday. Notice will be served at this address by certified mail tomorrow morning. Carol, you should retain counsel today. My mother stared at the screen. You're suing me, she said. I am unstealing, I said. There is a difference. Up to that point, my father had not spoken. He had been looking down at his hands. My father has square hands, engineer's hands, practical hands. He folded his napkin once. Then again. Then he looked up at me. Susie, he said. Dad. I knew. My mother snapped, Richard, don't. He did not look at her. I knew about the codicil, he said. Your grandfather told me the week before he died. He said he had taken care of you. I told your mother to file it. She said she would. I should have made sure.
I'm sorry, Susie.
I looked at him for what felt long and probably was only a few seconds. Dad, I appreciate you saying that. But you watched for 11 years. He nodded. He did not defend himself. I needed you to make sure, I said. I know. That was all. There was nothing else to say to a man who knew and chose quiet. My grandmother spoke again from the head of the table. Carol, you need to call a lawyer today. My mother sat down. She stared at the cedar box and said nothing. That dining room is still the quietest room I have ever been in. No one yelled after that. No one needed to. Paper has a way of ending the part where people pretend not to understand. 6 months later, in the second week of June, the Hartford Probate Court entered judgment. The codicil was admitted. The small estate affidavit was vacated. Title to 12 Maple Lane was ordered transferred back to me. Vanessa was given 90 days to vacate. Brett found them a 2-bedroom rental in West Springfield. My mother was ordered to repay $47,000 in directly traceable household withdrawals. The court reduced the full amount because her attorney argued, with some success, that the MBA had already been completed and could not be unwound cleanly. I accepted that. I never wanted every dollar. I wanted the truth on paper. 3 months later, Vanessa's Lexus was repossessed. She had been refinancing the note for 2 years. When the trust money stopped, the math stopped. Aunt Margaret stopped speaking to my mother in March. Aunt Lynn stopped in April. My cousin Madison called me one Wednesday and said, "I should have told you about the party the minute I posted it."
I'm sorry.
I thanked her. I told her it was not her job to know. My mother never called me. My father sent one text on my birthday in April. "Just thinking of you, Susie. Love, Dad." I did not answer. Vanessa sent me a 3-page handwritten letter in July. I read it once and put it in a drawer. I have not decided yet what to do with it. My grandmother and I had dinner every Wednesday from January through May. We talked about her garden, the weather, whether tomatoes still count as worth the trouble. We did not talk about my mother. Some truths do not need repetition once they are stamped into a court file. I moved into 12 Maple Lane on the second Saturday of May. I gave notice on my apartment. Packed the IKEA dresser. Packed the Goodwill couch. Packed the 8 boxes of contracts textbooks I had been pretending I would donate for years. Hired 2 college students with a truck. My grandmother arrived with a casserole and a thermos of coffee and supervised from a folding chair on the porch like a woman who had waited a decade to watch the right granddaughter come home. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cedar. The porch railing was loose in one spot, the same spot my grandfather meant to repair the summer he got sick. I bought wood glue at the hardware store in town and fixed it on a Sunday. The cedar box sits on the mantel now empty. The brass key rests in a small ceramic dish beside it. I have not put anything else in that dish. The greeting card I wrote to Vanessa served its purpose in that dining room. One evening in June I took it out, read what I had written, smiled once because I had meant every word at the time, and put it through the shredder. It is October now. 1 year since the surprise party. I am sitting on the front porch of 12 Maple Lane with coffee on the railing. The maple trees my grandfather planted in 1974 are in their second week of color, just like they were the morning I drove to my grandmother's house. Madison called this morning and invited me to her birthday in November. I said yes. My grandmother is coming for dinner tonight. She is bringing the casserole, which is becoming a habit. And I keep thinking about something my grandfather said to me on this porch when I was 21. "Susie, the law is the only family that doesn't play favorites." He was wrong about that. My grandmother showed up too. Here is what I learned. Being called self-sufficient was never a compliment in my family. It was a permission slip to give me less. And the day I stopped accepting that permission, I did not have to raise my voice once. I did not have to perform pain. I did not have to beg for memory, fairness, or love. I just had to open a folder, set a cedar box on a dining room table, and let the document say what I had spent 34 years being too polite to say aloud. That is my story. A cedar box. A brass key. 11 years that finally got their answer. If you have ever been the fine one, the easy one, the daughter they assumed would absorb it and move on, keep your paperwork. Keep your dates. Keep your copies. Quiet women are often carrying the whole file. And sometimes the only thing you need to do is place it on the table and let the room understand what it has been living with all along. I'll see you in the next one.